line as per Loadline convention, however, to match stringent requirements for carrying passengers. That is for subdivision. She cannot load more than the subdivision load line, and these are below your normal load line. So subdivision load lines are providing extra guarantee. Like you think you've been given vaccination, तो आपकी extra guarantee होगी. और वैसा है नहीं. लेकिन यहाँ subdivision load line is providing you guarantee so that आप उससे ऊपर नहीं लोड करोगे तो आपका फ्री बोर्ड वैसे ही बढ़ेगा. मोटा मोटा जो आपको समझाया है. I just explain in very easy language so that you understand basically है क्या. बिकॉज आप लोग रट्टा मारते हो उसके बाद क्या होता है उल्टा सीधा लिख देते हो. बिकॉज वो कंसेप्ट दिमाग में नहीं जाता एंड देन यू स्टार्ट राइटिंग वट एवर आपने रट्टा मारा उसको आधा चीज लिखोगे आधा कुछ और लिख देते हो. एंड आप सोचते हो कि भाई एग्जामिनर इज नॉट गोइंग टू रीड, ही इज गोइंग टू रीड ऑफ कोर्स. फिर आपकी बैंड बजाएगा. इसलिए वो इस टाइप का नहीं कि आधा यहाँ से लिख दिया आधा कहीं और से उठा के लिख दिया, वो नहीं चलेगा. ठीक से लिखो, पॉइंट में लिखो, थीसिस नहीं लिखना. Subdivision load line is a load line indicating depth to which a passenger may have been loaded. Passengers regarding the extent to which is subdivided and to the space for being time allotted of passengers. So subdivision load line is corresponding to the water line used for determining your subdivision of the ship. You know, Titanic sank despite having so many subdivisions because it had a 90-meter gash. It took 2 hours to sink. It didn't sink immediately. So passenger ship, when carrying passengers as per principal passenger conditions, is not allowed to submerge your subdivision load line C. We're not talking of your load line mark, but subdivision mark. You can't submerge. So C is the first subdivision load line from above. उसके नीचे C1, C2, C3 आएगा. सबसे ऊपर आएगा C, उसके नीचे C1, C2, C3. पहले आपको दिखा दे हैं क्या. So whenever the question comes, you have to draw the diagram also. ये वाला डायग्राम, इससे ये वाला इतना अच्छा डायग्राम नहीं है. एक और डायग्राम है which I'll show you. कैमरा जरा बंद करूं, ये हाथ पे मोबाइल पकड़ के बोलना पड़ता है. नोट्स तो आपको बहुत सारे भेजे हैं, मैं कैलकुलेशन सारी है. देख रहा हूँ दूसरा डायग्राम कहाँ गया. ये है एयर सीजन फाउल सीजन. तो बेसिकली अगर आप स्पेशल ट्रेड इसका एग्जांपल देखो, C1 C2 दिया हुआ है, तो दैट इज मच बिलो हियर. तो C उसके ऊपर आएगा. अगर C होगा तो C विल बी ऑन टॉप. बिलो दैट विल बी C1, उसके नीचे होगा C2. So the freeboard of C will be less as compared to C1 or C2. So it will be much below your winter load line mark. These C1, C2 and C. So this is your passenger ship safety certificate basis that this will be marked C1, C2, C3. Subdivision load lines. ये सब आपके नोट्स पे भेजा हुआ है. Now we come to this and then I'll come back to your other part also. पहले उसका डिटेल आपको समझाएं कि कैसे कैलकुलेट करते हैं. So subdivision requirement passenger ship depends on the volume of space used for passengers. Some passenger vessels may carry cargo spaces, which can alternatively be used for carrying passengers. So when you're carrying passengers in such specially adopted spaces, then the vessel will be allotted additional subdivision load line. And these all subdivision load lines will be C1, C2, C3, and C1 will be the deepest. So the details will be given in your passenger ship safety certificate, which I've shown you. Now, how do you calculate your subdivision for passenger ship? कितने subdivision होने चाहिए? How do you calculate? So first you have to understand why it is required. So अगर subdivision क्यों चाहिए? So that your progressive flooding can be reduced. You have subdivisions in chemical tanker 40 tanks. So that means the sinking will be much lower as compared to a bulk carrier which has got 5 holes. Because number of subdivisions, if it is less, then the ship is going to sink fast. So let us imagine a ship which is continuous forward and aft, meaning that the entire ship has got only one compartment. Will it be not be a dangerous situation if the water is entering the hull? One can imagine your loss of stability due to large free surface effect there. Now, to increase stability, let us divide the ship into two compartments with one watertight bulkhead separating them. So if the water was to enter one of the two compartments, the other compartment would continue to provide reserve buoyancy. This means the division of the hull into watertight compartment increases the level of safety, and more number of compartments, more factor of safety. So here the concept of factor of safety will come into play. So on passenger ships, this level of safety has to be maximum as compared to cargo ship, because the passengers are will have more insurance. They are more to be concerned with as compared with your cargo. You can't throw passengers overboard, but you can go throw cargo. Or you can jettison cargoes. You can't jettison passengers in any emergency. Master has the right to jettison if he thinks so, or cargo to save the ship, but he can't jettison passengers. So the passenger ship safety is utmost. So a passenger ship is subdivided number of compartments. The number of compartment has to be increased logically. Otherwise, a ship will be like a matchbox which can sink immediately. So the essence of subdivision of passenger ship is to calculate the number of compartments for its length. And that means you have to decide what is the maximum length of a compartment. And that maximum length for a compartment is known as permissible length of each compartment. And that is the ultimate goal of your passenger ship subdivision. And how is your permissible length found out? So that is multiplying your floodable length multiplied by factor of subdivision. Now, how do you find floodable length? Because your permissible length, you know, is achieved by multiplying floodable length by factor of subdivision. So let me underline this. So let us learn from about the calculation of floodable length. Now, floodable length is not the length of any compartment as such, or it's not a length of a ship itself. Now, first you have to understand what is margin line. So margin line basically is an imaginary line which is 76 millimeters below your bulkhead deck. And in any condition of stability, your margin line is not to be submerged. So margin line is that imaginary line all around the ship below your uppermost continuous deck. It's 76 millimeter below. In any condition of stability, prevent sinking or progressive flooding. That is 76 mm below, because if it is coming above, that means the water will enter the openings on the deck. So why it is known as a margin line? It is a margin of safety. So that line is a margin of safety. Let me explain with a diagram here how you say this is a margin line and what is why we consider it margin line. Then we will come to floodable length. Then I'll explain the diagram what is floodable length. Just by reading out, you will not understand. So let me explain by diagram. Now suppose this is the ship here. So if we consider this by any other color, this is the margin line which is 76 millimeter below your uppermost continuous deck. So this is your margin. That means in any condition of stability, you should not immerse your margin line. So now if your suppose your two of your compartments are flooded, so you cannot submerge your margin line, which is this line. You can't submerge this margin line. So any condition of stability, you can't submerge this margin line. So suppose we have made subdivisions like one division here, watertight compartment, this is watertight bulkhead here, watertight bulkhead here, watertight bulkhead here, watertight bulkhead here. Now we'll come to floodable length और फिर इससे समझाएंगे कि what is floodable length. I'm just leaving this diagram here. This is your margin line. The vessel should not submerge this margin line in any condition, even if one compartment, two compartments flooded, this should not submerge. Now we come back to the definition, to this floodable length. I'll explain with this diagram. Now to understand the calculation of floodable length, we have to understand the concept of margin line because it is used for determining a subdivision of passenger ships. So margin line is an imaginary line which is drawn 76 mm below your uppermost below the upper surface of uppermost deck. Importance of margin line that in all conditions of flooding, margin line is not to be submerged. So this is the main concept, that for margin line cannot be submerged in all any condition of flooding. You can't have margin line submerged, otherwise your ship is going to submerge. Now, why it is a margin line? Because this is the uppermost continuous deck. If I don't have a factor of safety here, then the water is going to enter your compartments and sink the ship. So this is a margin of safety. That's why it is a line which is providing a margin of safety. That is the reason this is known as margin line. Don't ask me why Monkey Island was the name given to Monkey Island. क्योंकि वहां पहले monkeys रखते थे for locating or for lookouts. Similarly, is crow's nest. Crow's nest पता है क्या है? What is crow's nest? Crow's nest सुना है क्या? What is crow's nest? सेकंड मिनट बताइए।
टाइटैनिक दिखा था ना, फॉरवर्ड पे लुकआउट।
हाँ, टाइटैनिक में था, कई शिप्स में होता है मास्ट के ऊपर। हम राजेंद्रा में थे तो राजेंद्रा में भी मास्ट था, उसके ऊपर वो लुकआउट का एरिया था, दैट वाज क्रोज नेस्ट। क्यों? क्योंकि कौवा जो है सबसे ऊपर पेड़ पे अपना घोंसला बनाता है। दैट इज द रीजन, दिस इज द टॉप मोस्ट पॉइंट फ्रॉम वेयर यू कैन ऑब्जर्व, सो दैट्स व्हाई द क्रोज नेस्ट। गनवेल क्यों नाम दिया गया? गनवेल इसलिए नाम दिया गया बिकॉज ऑन द बोर्ड्स that edge on the sheer plate, there they used to keep the guns for firing, so that's why gun whale. Poop deck क्यों नाम दिया गया? Poop deck इसलिए नाम दिया गया because there were portable toilets which are fixed there for poop, so that's why poop deck. तो सारों के लिए नाम दिया गया है because of certain reason. बट कुछ ऐसे है फैशन प्लेट, और वहां कौन फैशन कर रहा है? फैशन प्लेट नाम दिया है। फिर वाइल्ड कैट, ये नाम पता? व्हाट इज वाइल्ड कैट? सुना है क्या? ओरल में आजकल पूछते हैं कि व्हाट इज वाइल्ड कैट, नाम सुना है?
नहीं
सुना था। अच्छा है भाई, आप वो प्रोबेबिलिटी में आए नहीं हो, क्योंकि कभी आपको पूछ ले ना तो फिर आप लोग बोले घर जाओ आराम से पता करो व्हाट इज वाइल्ड कैट। पता करना है वाइल्ड कैट क्या है।
सर आप हैं तो फिर घर जाके पता क्या करें।
सब कुछ मैं ऐसे ही पूछ
सर, आप तो इंसाइक्लोपीडिया खुद है।
सर हमें पता होता तो घर जाके भी पता कर ही लेते सर। आप बताओ
वाइल्ड
सर।
कैट बता देते ज्यादा नहीं, मुझे वो चने के पेड़ में बैठा देते हो।
हर क्वेश्चन के रामबाण इलाज अभी है।
अच्छा, वाह वाह वाह, क्या बात क्या बात। चलो बता देते हैं वाइल्ड कैट क्या है। तुम लोग इतना हमें उकसाओगे तो फिर बताना पड़ेगा ना। एंकरिंग करते हो क्या? चीफ ऑफिसर जाओगे तो एंकर करने जाओगे तो आपको चीफ ऑफिसर को तो पूछ सकते हो व्हाट इज वाइल्ड कैट, क्योंकि आपका तो रोज का काम है। अब मैंने आपको हिंट दे दिया, एंकर करते हो तो वाइल्ड कैट चेन को पकड़ता है, वो क्या चीज है बताओ बताओ।
सर वो जो ग्रुप
Wild
बने
cat-
होते हैं जिप्सी में।
हाँ, वो ग्रुप बने हैं, दांत बने हैं उसको पकड़ने के लिए यार। आपके जो
ओके सर।
हिटलर में दांत जो बने हैं, ठीक है, उसको पकड़ने के लिए। अच्छा, ये जिप्सी और कैप्स्टन में फर्क क्या है पता है? जिप्सी और विंडलेस में ये कैप्स्टन में क्या फर्क है? बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन है ना। तो ऐसी ऐसी चीजें
कैप्टन को
आपको
देखा
पता
सर, वो हॉरिजॉन्टल रहता है और
इन जिप्सी वर्टिकल।
वर्टिकल।
उल्टा बोल दिया है। जिप्सी हॉरिजॉन्टल होता है, कैप्स्टन वर्टिकल हो, तुम लोग उल्टा बोल देते हो।
जिप्सी
जो
वर्टिकल।
हॉरिजॉन्टली घूमता है विंडलेस में वो जिप्सी है, और जो वर्टिकल आगे लगता है कई बार ऊप डेक में भी होता है, कई बार ऑफ स्टेशन में होता है, ऑफ चेन के साथ रोप्स के लिए, वो होता है कैप्स्टन। कैप्स्टन वर्टिकल होता है, हॉरिजॉन्टल होता है जिप्सी। कॉफिन प्लेट मालूम है क्या होता है? कॉफिन प्लेट, शू प्लेट नहीं मालूम? चलो आप लोग तो कुछ पता ही नहीं है। अब इतने क्वेश्चन पूछ लेंगे तो बोलेंगे अरे बाप रे, कहाँ से पटाखा छोड़ रहे हो एकदम, है ना। फिर हम
सर
पूछेंगे ये
ओरल मत लेना सर।
76 सेंटीमीटर वाला क्या माजरा है भाई? शिप कंस्ट्रक्शन में हर चीज 76 सेंटीमीटर होती है। कुछ एग्जाम्पल दो, 76 सेंटीमीटर क्या क्या है? कुछ एग्जाम्पल हैं?
सर आप ओरल मत लेना सर हम लोग।
बोल दूंगा 5 इंस्टेंस दो जो 76 सेंटीमीटर वाले हैं, हो गई छुट्टी। आप लोग बोले कान पकड़ लो, बोले आएंगे नहीं दोबारा ओरल के लिए, हो गई छुट्टी, है ना। चलो आगे करते हैं, या तो आपके ओरल हो जाएंगे तो बैंड बच जाएगा। इधर से लॉ का क्वेश्चन पूछूंगा तब लॉ बैंड बच जाएगा, सेफ्टी क्वेश्चन पूछूंगा तब लॉ बैंड बच जाएगा, बड़ा मुश्किल हो जाएगा ना। इसलिए अच्छा हम पढ़ा रहे हैं, आप लोग ओरल नहीं ले रहे, पढ़ाई लेते हैं। चलो ज्यादा करेंगे तो आप लोग भी भाग जाओगे चेयर छोड़ के। चलो
आप
ये
लेते हैं
आगे
ओरल?
चला। बेटा आप लेते होते ना तो फिर आपका फेलियर रेट बहुत हाई हो जाता ना। मैंने अप्लाई नहीं किया है।
सर पास करना चाहिए बच्चों को सर, फेल करके क्या मिलेगा सर।
नहीं बट मैंने तो अप्लाई नहीं किया, मेरा बैचमेट है वो मुदली है वहाँ, वो करता रहता है खिंचाई लोग। मुदली है वो, आर के मुदली है, कैप्टन
सर
मुदली,
वो तो
वो
मुंबई में
मास्टर।
थे, अभी कहाँ आ गए?
पहले कांडला थे, फिर मुंबई आ गया, पता नहीं डिप्टी नॉटिकल एडवाइजर बन रहा है, बन गया है आई बिलीव। वो अच्छी खिंचाई करता है। अब पता नहीं कहाँ है, अभी होगा इधर बॉम्बे।
नहीं सर तो बच्चों को पास करवाओ सर।
हाँ हाँ ठीक है ना, तो आप लोग तो तैयारी कर रहे हो, और क्या करना है, तैयारी करा देता हूँ, बाकी आप लोग की मर्जी, और क्या।
सर ये
चलो
तो
फिर
बताओ
आगे
पेपर होंगे कि नहीं होंगे सर।
क्या होंगे?
पेपर होंगे नहीं होंगे सर।
पेपर होंगे, क्यों नहीं होंगे, लेकिन हाँ कोरोना का चक्कर अभी हो रहा है, अभी तो होंगे नहीं, अभी सवाल नहीं उठता,
वही
अभी
सर,
तो नहीं
नोटिस
होगा।
जो नोटिस आया उसमें बोला कि फर्दर नोटिस तक
अब
बार बार आपको साइड देखते रहो डीजी की। तो सर आपको लगता है
तो
होंगे सर?
ऐसा है कि जब तक पूरा वैक्सीनेशन नहीं होगा तब तक तो रिटर्न नहीं होगा, और ओरल भी नहीं होगा, क्योंकि अभी वेव आ गया तो फिर रुक गया सब। पहले कम हो गए था, वेव आ गया, 3.5 लाख हो रहा है, सो ऑफ कोर्स दे आर गोइंग टू स्टॉप एवरीथिंग ना।
तो शिप पे जाना ही सही है सर फिर तो।
वैक्सीनेशन तो साल भर पूरा नहीं होगा।
देखो टाइम लगेगा, क्योंकि वैक्सीन इतना है नहीं ना, बिकॉज यूएस ने प्रोक्योर करके बैठ गया सारा, 70 मिलियन से ज्यादा तो वो लेके बैठ गया, और वो इंडिया को कौन सा देगा? जो वो रिजेक्ट कर रहा है वो इंडिया को दे देगा। अस्त्रा वाला जो रिजेक्टेड है वो इंडिया को देगा, और इंडिया रिजेक्टेड माल चलाएगा सब पे, और क्या। और फिर सबको कोरोना होगा, और क्या, जो बच गए वो भी हो जाएगा कोरोना। जो लगवाएगा उसको कोरोना हो जाएगा, और क्या। चलो पढ़ाई करते हैं यार, वो कोरोना कोरोना देख के तो मुश्किल हो जाता है, इसलिए साइड छोड़ दो उसकी, पढ़ाई करो बस। तो मार्जिन लाइन बेसिकली वी कांट सबमर्ज, मार्जिन लाइन सबमर्ज करने से फिर आपकी probability of sinking becomes more. So let us say the ship is divided into 5 compartments, and let's say compartment number 2 is flooded. The ship will go down by head. So with the negative trim, you cannot have the margin line submerged. So that means your ship is going to float. However, the dangerous situation, in order to this will be dangerous. So in order to ensure that the maximum length of each subdivided compartment has to be calculated with precision, you have to know the permissible length. So now what is your floodable length? So floodable length is defined the length of the compartment which when flooded will not submerge the margin line of the ship. So here you have to calculate by standard floodable length curves to require you to make your corrections from the value of the curve. So this will be in your stability, the standard floodable length curves you have to require for making your floodable length. Now इसको जरा explain करते हैं diagram से कैसे होता है, why, how your floodable length is calculated. Now if you see this, इसको मिटा देते हैं हम, and now we come to what is the floodable length, how your margin line is not to be submerged, कौन सा length है जहां वो submerged नहीं हो रहा. Suppose the ship has gone down by head. I suppose your sea is like this box, and the ship has gone down. Ship has gone down by head now like this. fictitious वाला बना रहा हूँ ऐसे समझाने के लिए बना रहा हूँ. Now this is your margin line, okay? Now what is the floodable length? तो इसमें फ्लडेबल लेंथ होगा कि आपकी मार्जिन लाइन को समर्ज नहीं करना है, यहाँ तो कर दिया. So suppose a floodable length is without submerging your margin line. Now this is margin line submerge हो गई, अगर submerge नहीं हो तो कितना बच गया, that is the floodable length. So suppose this is a compartment, the floodable length is this much, which is will not submerge the margin line. So that is a floodable length, because you're calculating your what is the permissible length, basically what is the length of compartment. But floodable length is where your margin line will not submerge. इसमें तो समझ होगी, ये तो एक और कंडीशन दिया. दूसरा कंडीशन बनाएंगे तो कौन से सेक्शन में आपका बच गया, that is a floodable length. So your margin line will not be, suppose we take this compartment and this compartment is flooded, suppose. इसको नहीं, इसको छोड़ देते हैं, इसको बाद में करेंगे, पहले मैं ये समझा रहा हूँ कि इसमें फ्लडेबल लेंथ क्या है. Now in this compartment is flooded, ये section जो बच गया which is not submerging your margin line, that is your floodable length. This is your floodable length. So in case your compartment is flooded, this section is not being immersed into the water, that is your margin line is not getting immersed in this section, that is your floodable length. So the floodable length is defined as the length of the compartment which will not be submerged when which will not submerge the margin line of ship. तो कितना section है जो margin line को submerge नहीं करता है. That is the length of compartment. और इसको आप calculate करोगे with your standard floodable length curves which are given in your stability booklet. And what will be the permissible length? So permissible length will be floodable length of a compartment multiplied by factor of subdivision. And floodable length is the length of compartment which when flooded will not submerge the margin line of ship. तो अगर हमने compartment छोटा कर दिया, so that will be the length of compartment which is not flooding that or which is not submerging the margin line. Now we have to calculate the criterion of service numeral which is CS for subdivision calculations. So here CS is your criterion numeral, L is your LBP or length between perpendiculars, M is the volume of machinery space, P is the volume of your passenger ship below your margin line, P1 is equal to K into N, Kn is from your tables, where K is यहाँ दिया हुआ है 0.056L, it's given in your table. N is your number of passengers ship is certified to carry. V is the volume of ship below your margin line. So when your P1, which is K into N, is greater than P, which is the volume of passenger space below margin line, then CS is 72 into M plus 2P1 divided by V plus P1 minus P. This you have to remember this formula for calculation of criterion of service numeral. In all other cases, when P1 is not greater than P or equal to P, there, so where P1 is not greater than P or it is equal to P, so it is less than equal to P, then CS is equal to M plus 2P divided by V, because P1 is less than equal to P. So we have to remove P1 there. So this formula you have to see for CS is your criterion for subdivision calculation. So that is your criterion numeral. Now, how do you calculate permeability of a compartment? So permeability is what? So permeability, इसका जरा definition लाल कर देते हैं. So permeability is a space that is available for water to occupy when your compartment, in case of flooding of the compartment. So हम engine room का space permeability लेते हैं 85% because 15% is occupied by the machinery. So the water will enter will be 85%. So for instance, the permeability of machinery space is taken as 85. This means in case of flooding of machinery space, maximum 85% of volume of the space will be taken by water. And remaining will be 15% occupied by the machinery. So for convenience, a uniform average permeability or UAP is used for any falling sections of hull. For your machinery space, uniform average permeability is 85 plus 10 into A minus C divided by V. So A is equal to volume of passengers below your margin line, but within your machinery space. And C is the volume of space below tween deck used for cargo, but within machinery space. Because we are calculating what is the permeability of machinery space. So I have a uniform average permeability basis machinery spaces. And V is the total volume of machinery space below margin line. So UAP is equal to 85 plus 10 into A minus C divided by V. So for sections forward and after machinery space, uniform average permeability is 63 plus 35 into A divided by V. A is the volume passenger space below margin line but within machinery space, and V is the total volume of machinery space below margin line. Now for calculation of factor of subdivision. So if the length of the ship is increased, so the factor of subdivision reduces. That means the permissible length of each compartment will reduce because your number of the length is increasing. So the permissible length of each compartment will reduce. So and that will increase your subdivision. So number of subdivision will increase basis length. That means the permissible length of compartment will decrease. So your factor of subdivision is depending between two extremes, factor A and B. Now what is factor A? So factor A is 58.2 divided by L minus 60 plus 0.18 for lengths greater than 131 meter, and factor B is 30.3 divided by L minus 42 plus 0.18 for lengths greater than 79 meters. So factor B will be of smaller value as compared to factor A, and therefore it is used in passenger ships, while factor A is used for cargo ships. So this factor is used for cargo ships, and factor B is used for passenger ships. So this is cargo ship, this is passenger ship. Because this is smaller value as compared to A. Now, how do you calculate your permissible length? So permissible length is floodable length into F, or factor of subdivision. So you have to see where is your transverse bulkhead above your collision bulkhead. So collision bulkhead on passenger ship is located above the forward perpendicular, not less than 5% of ship's length, not more than 3 meters plus 5% of L of the ship. In your other ship, it is 5 to 7.5% of length of ship, but on passenger ship, it is not less than 5% length of the ship and not more than 3 plus 5% of length of the ship. The location of transverse bulkhead dividing a passenger ship. So location of transverse bulkhead is arrived by measuring your permissible length at given points on the hull above your collision bulkhead. So where are your transverse bulkheads? That will be basis your permissible length aft of your forward collision bulkhead. So passenger ships have space which are adapted for accommodation of passengers and carriage of cargo. Alternatively, maybe having one or more additional load line marks corresponding to subdivision draft approved by alternative conditions. So C1 is for the principal passenger ship condition. C2, C3 will be alternative conditions. However, in no case shall any subdivision load line be placed above the deepest load line in salt water. They should all be below that. So C1 to C2 will be below your winter load line mark. So that is your subdivision. दूसरा एक टॉपिक इसका एक और सेक्शन है वो भी देख लेते हैं. Your examples are there for calculations and all, but इसमें आपकी कैलकुलेशंस तो आएंगे नहीं. दिस विल कैलकुलेशंस विल बी जो भी है दैट विल बी स्टेबिलिटी. इसमें कैलकुलेशंस नहीं आएंगे. देयर ओनली यू हैव टू राइट थीसिस. फॉर्मूला लिख देना बट यू डोंट हैव टू राइट एनीथिंग एल्स. क्राइटेरियन ऑफ न्यूमेरल आपको बता दिया है. स्पेशल ट्रेड कंडीशन का इसमें है कि नहीं. ये जो पैसेंजरशिप सेफ्टी का सेफ्टी सर्टिफिकेट में C1 C2 C3 दिया होता है. सब डिविजन लोड लाइंस. C1 मोर कंडीशन इसमें so factor subdivision depends on ship's length, nature of service. Factor decreases in regular and continuous manner as the vessel's length increases and also forms a factor A for engage in carrying cargo and B for passenger vessels. Factor ensures that one or two or three compartments must be flooded before the vessel reaches the margin line, and the vessels will therefore be referred to as one, two or three compartment vessel with regards to damage stability characteristics. CS आपको भी समझाया था. That's your damage stability के requirements हैं, unsymmetrical flooding and all. So this is your, इसमें इधर मार्क किया, कईयों में नीचे मार्क है, डिपेंडिंग किधर किधर है, बट समर लोड लाइन से नीचे ही होगा, उससे ऊपर नहीं होगा. So C1 is principally for passenger carriers, C2 is passengers in twin decks, and C3 is for lower deck carrier. And details of the load lines are recorded in passenger ship safety certificate together with the spaces used alternatively for passengers or cargo. So the deepest subdivision mark cannot be above the deepest salt water load line. Therefore, your subdivision line is above the appropriate international load line for a particular locality and season. If it is there, the international load lines will apply. Then you, if it is above that, then your international load lines will apply, not this C1 C2. At no stage in salt water should the appropriate subdivision load line be submerged. अब इधर में स्पेशल ट्रेड एक और आपके D1 D2 भी आया था. ड्यूरिंग योर अनबर्देड पैसेंजर्स जो आपके बर्थ में नहीं रहते थे, डेक पे रहते थे, उसके लिए they had D1 D2 and D3 for Hajj pilgrims. और इसके greater freeboard होते थे than sea lines. So these were known as special trade passenger vessels. So in special trade passenger vessels, you had D1 D2 D3 which had more freeboard than your C1 C2 C3. So during the Shimla Convention in 1931, due to attention was given to special trade passenger vessels carrying unberthed deck passengers between Singapore, India, Gulf and Red Sea, and to provide additional safety of these vessels, another subdivision load lines were there, which were D1, D2, D3, which were assigned to give a greater freeboard than the sea lines. So these were for special trade passenger vessels. यही आपको बताना था उनके लिए क्या है. That is for unberthed passenger ships. देन आया था 16 के सब डिविजन और स्टेबिलिटी क्राइटेरिया क्या है, द क्वेश्चन had come last time. So I've sent you notes. So this was MSc Circular in 2017. Revise explanatory notes to Solus chapter 2, 1 subdivision and damage stability requirements. So we will not do damage stability here. Subdivision का check करते हैं. Let it come down. So that's your required subdivision index R. ये सब तो करने की जरूरत नहीं है. तो ये परमेबिलिटी दिया हुआ है, कार्गो परमेबिलिटी एरियाज का, टिम्बर कार्गो, वुड चिप, व्हाट इज द परमेबिलिटी. Now comes your stability requirements of passenger ship. Sufficient safety level, large compartment located aft of your collision bulkhead. Now DBs के बारे में दिया है. This is to minimize the impact of flooding from minor grounding. Special attention to be paid to vulnerable area and the turn of the bilge. DBs in passenger ship and cargo ship other than tankers. The Roro ship, so construction of watertight bulkheads, shaft tunnel. तो फिर आपको इसका पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. जो पढ़ा है बस वही है, ये सब पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. एंटायर डैमेज स्टेबिलिटी पे है, पैसेंजर शिप लोड लाइंस के ऊपर नहीं है. ठीक है, यू डोंट हैव टू स्टडी दिस. जितना दिया है बस वही ठीक है. सो सब डिवीजन जितना कराया था, आई थिंक दैट इज गुड इनफ. Don't have to worry about anything more. D1, D2, D3 भी करा दिया. That is for special trade passenger vessels. ये सब भी आपको भेजा हुआ है. ये तो करा दिया already. ये तो करा दिया. This I've already done. D1, D2, D3 कर दिया. ठीक है, फिर आपका load line is done and your passenger ship's subdivision is also done. So next 2 classes I'll be completing your past papers. And then your doubts and all I'll be covering in next 2 classes. For your February batch, you can put in all your doubts. I'll be discussing all your papers and your doubts, and then we'll continue from the first chapter of your stress, your tension, your malleability, ductility, and stress strain. So I'll start back from chapter 1 after I finish your past papers. ठीक है sir? So hope you have understood everything now. It's not that difficult, and don't take a strain with this. इतना ज़्यादा difficult भी नहीं है. इसके बारे में पैसेंजर शिप सब डिवीजन के बारे में एक बार पढ़ लो. कैलकुलेशन कैसे होता है, परमिसिबल लेंथ का फॉर्मूला क्या है, फ्लडेबल लेंथ क्या है, क्राइटेरियन ऑफ सर्विस न्यूमेरल का फॉर्मूला क्या है. ऑल दिस यू हैव टू रिमेंबर. रेस्ट ऑल ज़्यादा पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. ठीक है, so I'll not take more your time, and we'll have a break now. Got one more class of other this thing. The next week also, I believe I'll have 6 classes, because I think Sojanya is taking leave. So next week again, I believe we'll have 6 classes. I'll have 6 classes with you. तो आपका सारा कुछ हो जाएगा. ठीक है, so I'll cover your doubts and all. ठीक है, then take your break now.
Thank you, sir.